Imagine this. You're at your job, working hard, minding your business, and suddenly your boss storms in and says you're fired, but not because you messed up, just because they don't like how you think. Well, that's kind of what's happening right now between Donald Trump and Jerome Powell, the guy who runs America's central bank. And if Trump has his way, Powell's days might be numbered. But wait, why is this happening? Can Trump actually fire him? And what does this mean for your money, your job, your rent, and even your student loans? Let's break it down. But first, if you're new to our investing channel, feel free to smash that subscribe button for your better future. Now, let's begin. Act 1. Who is Jerome Powell? Jerome Powell is the chairman of the Federal Reserve. Translation, he's the person who controls interest rates, inflation policies, and whether your mortgage rate is nice and low or heartbreakingly high. He was appointed by Trump back in 2018, which makes this even juicier. Trump basically hired the guy, and now he wants to boot him. Why? Because Powell hasn't been cutting interest rates fast enough. Trump wants cheaper borrowing, less government debt payments, and a booming economy before the 2024 election. But Powell's job isn't to please the president, it's to keep the economy stable. That means fighting inflation and making boring, careful decisions, even if they're unpopular. Let's simplify this with a high school example. Imagine your school is throwing a dance. Trump wants to blast the music, turn up the lights, and hand out free snacks. Powell's the teacher saying, "We can't afford that, and if we go wild now, we'll have detention later." The Fed's job is long-term stability, not short-term popularity. Act 2. Trump's problem with Powell. Trump recently said he'd 100% fire Powell if he's re-elected. His team even claims Powell wasted billions on renovating the Fed's DC headquarters. A weird flex, but okay. Trump's real issue? Powell is independent. He doesn't do what Trump tells him. That's like Trump trying to fire the referee because his team isn't winning. And here's the kicker. Legally, a president can only fire the Fed chair for cause, meaning serious misconduct, not just policy disagreements. It's like trying to fire your math teacher because you hate fractions. Some legal experts say Trump can't do it. Others say he'll try anyway. Because, well, Trump. Let's add an example. During Nixon's presidency, something similar happened. Nixon pressured the Fed to keep interest rates low to boost the economy before his re-election. Short-term win, but guess what followed? Stagflation. That's when you have high inflation and high unemployment. It's like being broke and your rent goes up. Act 3. Why this matters to you. So what if Powell gets fired? Why should you care? Let's say Powell gets replaced by someone who just listens to Trump. Here's what might happen. 1. Interest rates drop fast. Sounds good, right? But that could overheat the economy. More demand equals higher prices equals more inflation. 2. Inflation rises again. Remember when eggs cost $7? We might be back there if the Fed gets political and ignores inflation. 3. Markets panic. Investors love stability. If they think the Fed is just a puppet, stocks could tank. Your 401k? Poof. 4. Borrowing costs get weird. If long-term investors don't trust the Fed, they'll demand higher interest. That means credit cards, mortgages, and car loans could get more expensive. 5. Savings value drops. High inflation eats away at your savings. If you've got $10,000 saved and inflation hits 7%, you're basically losing $700 a year in value. That's like a Netflix subscription for life. 6. Debt looks cheap but gets dangerous. With lower rates, people borrow more. But if inflation rises later and the Fed reverses course, suddenly your low-rate mortgage or loan becomes a trap. And internationally, the US dollar could weaken. That vacation in Europe? Twice as pricey. That imported iPhone? Ouch. Act 4. What history and other countries teach us. Want to know what happens when leaders mess with central banks? Look at Turkey. Their president fired central bankers like it was The Apprentice. The result? Sky-high inflation, currency collapse, and total investor panic. Inflation in Turkey hit over 60% at one point. Imagine your rent doubling in a year. Your paycheck stays the same, but groceries cost twice as much. Chaos. Even in the US, we've seen what happens when central banks get political. Again, Nixon's example is key. His interference with the Fed helped him win, but left a mess for everyone else. It took years to clean up. Independent central banks keep economies stable. Once you politicize them, you might get short-term sugar highs but long-term stomach aches. Act 5. What you can do about it. Trump might try to fire Powell. Powell might fight it. Markets will definitely watch closely. But what you can do is stay informed, subscribe to smart news channels like this one. Understand your loans. If you have student loans, mortgages, or credit cards, know how interest rates affect them. Build an emergency fund. Rate shocks and inflation can crush unprepared households. Invest smartly. Diversify. Focus on long-term gains, not short-term hype. Maybe hold off on buying that luxury car with a variable interest rate. Trust us. Let's get real. This isn't just Trump versus Powell. It's politics versus your paycheck. Because if we lose trust in the system that manages our money, everything from your grocery bill to your retirement account becomes one giant question mark. With all that said, should the president be allowed to fire the Fed chair? Feel free to comment below. And remember, it's not just about who's in charge. It's about whether they're playing for the short-term win or the long-term game. Stay smart, stay skeptical, and stay subscribed.
Thank you so much for watching. If you want to learn more, feel free to check out our next video.